The story of the strange ruts begins in the aftermath of World War I, when the League of Nations grants Japan territories in the Pacific.
That puts the Empire of Japan sort of on a collision course with the United States, because the United States is also occupying parts of the Pacific, and the two countries are beginning to rival one another.
In the 1930s, Japan begins a period of rapid military expansion, which will see it take over parts of China and the Soviet Union. With more than 40% of its population of Japanese descent, Hawaii is directly in the firing line of these imperialist ambitions.
The Japanese looked toward the Hawaiian Islands as being a place where they could potentially establish an overseas empire.
People on the islands are certainly feeling the impact of this increased tension.
Yet few in the U.S., including President Roosevelt, believe the Japanese possess the military strength needed to threaten U.S. soil.
There is a lot of thinking among, especially naval planners, that there is no way that Hawaii would be directly vulnerable to an attack.
Most people were sort of content to ignore the Pacific. It didn't show up in the headlines. It was a third-page matter.
Despite Washington's apparent rejection of the Japanese threat, among the Hawaiians, fear continues to grow.
Everyone in the Hawaiian Islands is concerned, but it's the island of Niihau, the most northern western island, where the fear is the most intense.
It would be the first line of defense in any kind of an attack.
In 1933, a local landowner identifies the lakebed in the image as a potential natural runway for a Japanese invasion and decides to act.
What he decided to do was dig up acres and acres and create this grid system of trenches that would prevent the dry lakebeds from becoming the perfect landing strip for Japanese aircraft.
If a Japanese plane tries to land, it's going to hit these furrows and either crack up on landing or maybe even flip over and pancake, as the pilots call it.
A small team of islanders uses shovels and a plow to carve out half a square mile of 2-foot-deep ruts across the lakebed revealed from space.
Rutting up these lake beds is no small undertaking. It's going to take some back-breaking manual labor.
Some people might have looked at him as crazy, but it really is a pretty impressive foresight that he sees the coming war and creates this defense that will deny the Japanese any idea of using this as a forward base.
On December 7th, 1941, the Maverick ranchers' fears are realized when 360 Japanese aircraft rained down terror on Pearl Harbor. In the aftermath, a damaged Mitsubishi Zero heads for Niihau, hoping to land in the lakebed in the image.
His plan is to put his aircraft down and then rejoin the fleet. Now his plans are going to be foiled by the trenches.
The rutted lakebed forces the pilot to crash land, and he is detained by the islanders. One of the only Japanese prisoners captured during the infamous assault on Pearl Harbor.
It really is kind of a remarkable end to a really dramatic tale.
And that's why the ruts are in the lake. And those ruts can still be seen to this day, almost 80 years later.